You're welcome. Okay, we are live streaming the video.
Oh, great. I want to say good afternoon to everyone and welcome to the Legislative Council Subcommittee on Racial Impact Statement Development for the Maine State Legislature. My name is Rachel Talbot Ross, and I represent House District 40, which is part of Portland, and chair this subcommittee. Again, welcome. We'll do some introductions, and we'll start with my colleagues in the House and ask Speaker Facto to introduce himself.
Ryan Fecto, I represent my hometown of Biddeford.
Thank you, Speaker. Representative Dillingham.
Hi, I'm Representative Dillingham. I represent the towns of Oxford, Otisfield, and Mechanic Falls in Western Maine.
Thank you. And Senator Daughtry, if you could introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Maddie Daughtry. I represent Senate District 24 and excited to be here.
Thank you all. Director Fox and Executive Director Gresser, if you could introduce yourself with staff to the subcommittee.
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Fox. I am the director of the Office of Policy and Legal Analysis and serving as co-staff to the subcommittee.
And I'm Suzanne Gresser. I'm the executive director of the Legislative Council, and I help Danielle. It's really serving as staff.
Well, thank you both. I'm going to pass this off to Director Fox and can walk us through our agenda today.
Well, I think we're kind of picking up where we had hoped to go at the last meeting, which was, I think Representative Talbot Ross, you had a rough idea of a proposal for a structure moving forward for the pilot. I have the broad 50,000 foot view of it, but I believe you have the closer view. So I don't know if that's where you want to go. If that's where you wanted to pick up, that you had come up with something that you were going to present before the council to get their feedback on that.
That would be great. And so if with your indulgence, committee members, we may be able to share the screen. I don't know, Director Fox, if you can put up the draft proposal. It was just sent to you. And we could walk through it for consideration.
Okay, oh yeah, here, okay. Yep, just give me a second to put that in a format so you can see it on screen.
Thank you. And then we'll send a copy, forward a copy to each of you now as well.
Suzanne, looks like you're on that. Did you want to forward that to the, would you mind forwarding that to the subcommittee members? Okay. So I didn't put this together. So no. I'm not really sure I could walk you through this.
No, I don't mind doing that, Director Fox.
All right, okay, I'll turn it over to you then. Let me just hit screen share then.
So we're picking up off of from our conversation about 2 weeks ago now, in which we are really trying to figure out how the scale and the scope of this pilot for the second regular term. And in meetings with staff and the University of Maine system, members of the research team at the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Tribal Populations, as well as some folks from the Cutler Institute at the University of Southern Maine, we have been able to really come up with this kind of, if you will, consensus proposal for the committee's consideration. The parties that would help us move forward are obviously under our direction, the Legislative Council, but the Permanent Commission and the University of Maine systems with Cutler Institute and Margaret Chase Smith would be the parties to move the pilot forward. The process is very, very similar to what we've been discussing lately. The subcommittee would look at up to 4 committees in which to determine a number of bills that would be part of the pilot. I am proposing that those 4 committees, and that those 4 committees would be Education, Labor and Housing, Health and Human Services, and Judiciary. It's based off of some of our previous conversation about where the reliable data resides in the state and to what degree we have access to it. So these 4 committees seem to have at least some baseline data that we would be able to use in a quantitative analysis. The process that I'm suggesting is that we come up with, we agree on those 4 committees, and then we come up with a pool of bills that we could consider and base the bills off of the fact that they have been carried over by the state legislature. We were thinking that that allows us to really work from a public hearing. The public hearings have all taken place, or they're at some point in the process. But that there's already been some analysis done on language has been, for the most part, finalized, and there is a body of work associated with those bills, making it a much more efficient process for the analysis to take place. This timeline would allow us to get the research team the proposed bills fairly soon, no later than December 1st, and then they would be able to return those statements back to us by the end of February. What we still need to also determine is in what format the statements and the analysis would come to us. Is it a presentation in person to those committees? Is it a written report? How would we like those statements to come back to us? Once we have determined the number of bills, the research team will utilize the following framework that I believe comes from the Urban Institute. It is these questions were gleaned from the Urban Institute's work on racial impact statements, and the framework responds to the following questions, and that is: what problem is this policy or legislation addressing? Is the problem worse or exacerbated for people of color? What factors contribute to or compound racial inequities around this problem? More specifically, what policies, institutions, or actors have shaped these inequalities, disparities, or disparate impacts? And what actors at what levels of influence could reduce these inequities? Working with the Permanent Commission Humane System would predominantly be responsible for the quantitative analysis, with the Permanent Commission working with them on some of that, and the Permanent Commission would develop a process for the gathering of qualitative data and the analysis, working with Cutler Institute. Questions for the subcommittee for us to consider right now is the number of bills that we would want analyzed. Do we want to see this in terms of, is it better to have a number of different bills that go through this pilot, or are we more focused on the quality of the analysis for the pilot? What types of bills should be piloted? And we can talk about that a little bit more. We'll open it up for some discussion. And then we really, really want to make sure that there is reliable data and information available to the research teams, and that the data collection processes have been done using an ethical human subject research value, and then thinking about if this proposed time frame is really feasible. That is the proposal, and we could open this up for some discussion or any questions from subcommittee members at this time. Hearing no discussion, no questions. I'll go back to staff and maybe have you weigh in on what you think about the probability of this proposal working based on your knowledge of the legislative process.
Do you want me to stop screen sharing, Representative
That'd be
Ross?
great. Sure.
Oh, it looks like you have hands up, Representative Talbot Ross.
Oh, there we go.
From Representative Daughtry and Speaker Fecto. Phew.
We'll start with Senator Daughtry. Thank you.
So I'm just trying to get a chance to read, and I think that's part of probably the moment of silence is all of us just trying to process it all. And there's a lot of really good stuff in here that I'm really excited about. I like the idea of the committee. My only concerns are just wondering, I'm trying to find a better way to phrase it, so I'll just try my first stab at it. But if we're just, I know it's a pilot, so we're trying to be super narrow on looking at addressing disparities, but I'm wondering if that might be limiting us and looking at different questions. So I'm going to keep looking at it. I have a couple of questions, but I think it's a good start. So.
Thank you, Senator. Speaker Fecto.
Sorry. Quick question. Did you say that we would have the bills selected by December 1st? And does that include all bills, including new bills that are being submitted for new consideration, or will it? Yeah, that's the question. Is it bills both carried over and newly submitted?
Well, thank you for the question, Speaker Fecto. No, in talking with Director Fox and some of the folks from the Humane System and the Permit Commission, it really would be more in terms of the limited amount of time that we have to put this together. We really felt that it would be limited to the carryover bills, that we would pull from the carryover bills, because there's already been a public hearing. There is some testimony. There was already some engagement with the public and with OPLA and some of the other legislative nonpartisan offices. Bills are at various stages, but they're further along, just even in terms of their language, than what some of the concept drafts or some of the positions that are new bills are in currently.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially since, I mean, we all know that the second session is so much more condensed, and we still tend to have a lot of work to do because we are enthusiastic and we want to tackle a lot of the issues that are facing the state. So I think it makes a ton of sense to focus this on carryovers and to get the committees to look at the bills that they have in their possession that they want to submit for this process. And I would suggest that we would do something in the realm of like 20 bills total. So like 5 bills per committee, up to 5 bills. The committee doesn't necessarily have to do 5 bills, but up to 5 bills for a total of 20. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable place to land. And of course, Director Fox, I'm open to your feedback if you feel like that is too many, but it feels like that would give us a good starting point and enough bills to really take a look at, how the process works and where there is data and where there isn't data.
So I was part of a meeting with Representative Talbot Ross and the folks from the University of Maine system, and I think they struggled with that number too. And they said, I think it might be able to be answered best by whether or not you want to focus on quantity and reaching a broad subject, a broad array of areas, topics, or if you wanted to focus on the quality. So what a robust impact statement might look like. And even though there may only be a few subject areas that would, be addressed that way, you'd get a sense of what they might look like for other subject areas, because it would be more of a complete statement and something that you might expect if this were to move forward in this posture permanently after the pilot. So I think, and just generally, even from a minimal impact statement, based on what I'm hearing the folks that would be doing the analysis would do, 20 sounds like a lot to me. It's better to probably ask them that question, but 20 sounds like a lot based on what it sounded like they were hoping to do, even for a rather bare bones impact statement. And I do think there was quite a bit of discussion about whether to focus on quantity versus quality. So I can't give you an exact number, but I can sort of throw back at you what they discussed.
Okay, so basically their argument is if our goal is to try to touch a lot of subject areas and see what's out there for information and have some sense of what an impact statement would look like, perhaps not necessarily with a lot of detail, but at least generally speaking what it would look like, then you have a higher number of analyses. But if our goal is to have what it would look like to have a really high quality end product, but not have a lot of those analyses, then to focus on having having a smaller number, but getting really focused and well researched analyses put together. That's basically that's what we have to consider here.
Perfectly stated and much more concise than I did. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Speaker Fecto, a couple of things though. One is that this proposal is suggesting that the subcommittee actually picks out the specific bills within these 4 committees and moves that slate of bills to the Humane System and the Permanent Commission. They would actually look at the feasibility of conducting this analysis on the bills we've suggested, and they would come back to us and say, you've given us, I'm just going to make up the number, you've given us 50 bills. Out of these 50 bills, we think that 5 of them actually will work for this, for our capacity and for your needs. So we could do a couple things. We could just tell them the committees that we're focused on and give them the list of carryover bills for those committees. That's one choice, and they'd come back. We could literally select the bills and let them look that over, and they'd come back. The third option is we would allow for perhaps the committee chairs in each one of those committees to look at their carryovers and say, this is where our greatest need is from our committee standpoint, and give them this the slate of bills. In all of those scenarios, we're giving them some bills for their consideration around their capacity, and then they're letting us know what they think makes the most sense in terms of quality and quantity, the balance between those two. I just want to make sure that the steps are well understood, because we need them to tell us what's going to be the most feasible.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. I guess I'm open to, I guess I'd be open to the idea of sending them over the carryover bills based on the committees that are selected, or having the chairs do it. I guess I would feel a little bit uncomfortable having not sat on any of these policy committees to say, hey, I just so happen to think that this bill should be analyzed, but not give the committee that input, given that they obviously have wrestled with the bills that are carried over for well over a year now, or just or nearly a year now. So I guess I'm open to both. Either of those options would make sense to me.
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Daughtry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and apologies for our impromptu committee member who's using my lap as a way to see squirrels. I sort of looking at the draft, I echo sort of what Speaker Fecto was saying, wanting to make sure that I like the idea of the carryovers because the language is crafted. It's going to make it easier from a pilot perspective. But no kisses, please. But one of the things, and having that committee process, because they're going to be more familiar with the need for that outlook and that lens, and making sure we're involving at least the committee chairs, or at least their voices in the process. But I realize now, looking at the questions, my one thing I want to make sure we flag, and I know that's the heart of what we're trying to get at this, but a lot of the questions are mostly just on negative impacts of disparities. And I know that we have some carryover bills that have the potential to have a real positive impact on lessening, different gaps and writing a lot of inequities. So if we can just make sure that in the questions we make it clear that we're looking to see if bills potentially have a positive impact as well. And there's a squirrel. If that makes any sense.
It does. I just again, these metrics, this set of questions that we would utilize come from again, the framework from Urban Institute, and it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, either Danielle or Suzanne, it's my understanding that Sarah Goen from the Data Innovation Project at Cutler Institute, who suggested we utilize this framework. It sounded to me that at least DIP has some familiarity with these questions.
Yeah, I don't know that I could speak to their level of familiarity with it. I know that that Sarah was looking to these in the efforts to narrow. So, because I think we were at a stage in the discussion where they were saying, what are the metrics? What are we measuring? Like, and because the question was, what's your capability in terms of the University of Maine system and these partners? What do you think you can handle? And so this is how we got to them getting a better grasp on what they thought they could handle. And they were looking, as I recall the conversation, Sarah suggested this framework and said that just having a framework like this would help us understand what we're answering, because there's a myriad of possibilities if you're looking at impacts, and this would kind of, tie those up a little bit in terms of some parameters. So I think I don't know about her familiarity, but I know that it provided some helpful guidance to her to look at doing a statement by focusing on these questions. If that makes sense.
It does. Well, I will give just a little bit, give a little attention to the qualitative component of this, and just say, in thinking about the question quantity versus quality, the Permanent Commission has just recently brought on full-time staff, and we do have a director of community engaged research, Dr. Meadow Dibble from Brown University. But the Permanent Commission would be hiring someone who had a specific expertise in this type of subject, human subject research. So the qualitative, most of the qualitative data has to be gleaned, right? It's not just, most of it is not just sitting somewhere. There's no real depository for this. So we have to take that into consideration as part of the time frame, that some of this information, some of this data would have to be collected and analyzed, not merely analyzed. Some of it has to be collected. We have to go out there and collect the information. Are we at a place where you think we could make some decisions based on this proposal? We could start with the selection of the 4 committees. Maybe
I would move the committees that are selected as outlined in the proposal.
I would second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion to accept the 4 committees as indicated in the proposal? Hearing none, seeing no further discussion. All those in favor, raise your hand, turn your cameras on. Electronic hands? Aye, thank you.
Representative Dillingham.
Thank you. Thank you all. So it's unanimous with those who are present that the 4 committees, Education, Labor and Housing, Health and Human Services, and Judiciary will serve as the committees for the pilot. The next decision would be in what the selection of the actual bills, how you would like to move that going forward. And again, the 3 different ways in which to do that would be for us to contact committee chairs and for us to ask them to look at the carryovers and to provide us with a list by a certain date for the bills that we would move on. That's one. The other would be for us to take a look at the carryovers and decide in the committee which ones we'd like to move forward. And then the third way would be just to send all of the carryover bills from these committees directly to the research team. Director Fox?
Talbot Ross, I put something in the chat just for reference, the number of carryovers for each of those committees. So Health and Human Services has 18, Judiciary has 20, Labor and Housing has 16 carryovers, and Education has 8.
Thank you so much for that information, because that really does seem much more manageable, just hearing those numbers, as opposed to thinking about all thank you for grounding us. Suggestions, comments? I think Senator Daughtry.
Oh, okay.
Please, Representative Dillingham.
Oh, thank you very much. I apologize. I think I would be in favor of once hearing the numbers of what we have to carry over in the 4 committees, of actually just sending all of those over to the committee and letting them decide what they feel would fit within the parameters and their time to be able to make the decision on which ones they wanted to study.
Thank you, Representative Dillingham. I hear that as almost a motion, but Senator Daughtry and Representative Speaker Fecteau, how do you feel about just sending all of the bills over?
I think that makes sense. I'd agree with what Representative Dillingham was saying.
Wait, was Representative Dillingham saying to send all of the bills over to the research team, or was she saying to send the bills over to the committee for them to make decisions about which ones get sent over to the research team?
Sorry, research team is what I meant.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine with me. That's fine.
Director Fox?
I'm assuming that you would want me to exclude concept drafts unless there has already been language attached to the concept drafts, because there's not much there
Yes.
to analyze. I don't know that there are any, but if there are, we would exclude those unless there has been language proposed to amend the concept draft to include that language.
That sounds right to me, Director Fox. Thank you for that. So a motion to move that forward, perhaps, Representative Dillingham?
Yes, that's my motion. To
Second.
send all of the bills to the research team.
So it's been moved and properly seconded to move all of the carryover bills that have language to the research team for feasibility analysis. And it's been moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Not seeing no further discussion. All those in favor can say aye, raise their hand.
Aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous with those who are present. The next question to answer to determine is with the RIS framework. And if we would like to adopt this framework that's been suggested by the Urban Institute. I'm going to ask Senator Daughtry, are you, the framework is with the 5 questions is fine with,
I was going to say, yeah, it was just wanting to make sure that I think sometimes there are bills that we can have that might not necessarily have a negative impact, but a positive impact, which I think will come out from those questions. It's just something I want to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you. So a motion to adopt the racial impact statement framework as articulated by the Urban Institute. Just a motion to move it forward. Thank you, Senator Daughtry. And a second.
Just a quick question. So just to clarify, to Senator Daughtry's point, what if the bill is actually making things better versus worse or exacerbated? Is there a question here that would address that? I guess if the answer is no to is the problem worse or exacerbated, then it's assumed yes, but okay. What if it's neutral? What if it's new? Okay.
So that is exactly what the analysis is going to determine for us, is if the bill itself, if the bill were to come law, would it maintain the inequity, the disparity, would it exacerbate it, or would it improve outcomes? And that one question there should get us the answer and the factors attributed to it, so that we would be able to determine one of those three things. Okay. Remember, these impact statements are supposed to conclude something, so they are to conclude whether or not it's exacerbated, improved, or remains neutral.
Representative Talbot Ross.
Sure.
This is my looking to get clarity on drafting a committee amendment, muscle flexing at the moment, but I'm not sure that those questions necessarily, I think if this is the direction we give them, I'm not sure that they do say, would this improve an existing disparity, or if there is something that is already potentially creating equality among various ethnic groups, could this damage it? Would it improve it? I'm not sure that it does get at the positive, if this is indeed the framework. So if that is something that you would want to come out in a statement, I'm not sure that this framework does get that. If I were looking at it as a scope question and doing an analysis, and I did that for a little while when I worked with OPEGA, I'm not sure that we always go back to the question, and I'm not quite sure. So I wondered if it wouldn't be worthwhile to maybe revisit these a little bit to sort of get at that positive impact as well. I just don't want to assume that they will understand that if we say, yes, use that framework, without the subcommittee being explicit to the research team that you would also be looking for policies that may be neutral or positive for disadvantaged populations.
Thank you, Director Fox. So maybe rephrasing or replacing is the problem worse or exacerbated to include to rephrase that so that we get, if this is enacted, would the outcomes for people of color, for racial, indigenous, and tribal populations, that's the language I prefer to adopt instead of just racial inequities, because they're not monolithic. If this policy was adopted, would the outcomes for racial, indigenous, and tribal populations and be further exacerbated, worsen, stay neutral, or be improved? Is that basically the gist of it, Director Fox?
Yeah, and I might be able to pull from some of that work we did looking at other states, some more language. So if you could just agree to that in concept, I'm happy to rework the question for you and give that back to you, just like you would an amendment review. And I'll just sort of reframe the question so they capture that, because and you can just agree to it in concept now, and I'll present the language back to you and you can tweak it.
That sounds good.
I think Representative Talbot Ross, I think what you outlined is great.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Director Fox. Senator Daughtry? Oh, okay. The one question I have back to you, Director Fox, is it is also not very clear from this that the analysis has to reach some conclusion. I mean, right? Because we're actually after a conclusion.
Well, I look at the second bullet, which is the problem worse or exacerbated for people of color? And then we would add the positive language that you just suggested. To me, that's where the conclusion would be. And then the following bullets are sort of more the detail that provide the context of in what ways. That's how that's how I look at that. But
yeah,
if you'd like, in sort of the preamble to the questions or the preamble to the framework, we could even sort of embed in there that is the idea, is that the questions are looking to conclude the following.
that would be extremely helpful, Director Fox. Senator Daughtry.
I just wanted to keep in mind for all of us who are having this conversation, especially because it's a pilot, that sometimes we might not be able to have a direct conclusion. We might be able to have the matrix say, you know, not enough information or X, Y, and Z. But it could be something, you know, we need to have space for something neutral. That makes sense. You know, something might not necessarily be very clear whether it's going to necessarily go one way or the other, but it could sort of just say, this is just, I don't want to use the phrase status quo, but I think neutral is kind of what we want to keep in mind.
I would agree, Senator. The one consideration, though, is, I mean, and maybe what we have to do, Director Fox, is also put somewhere within these a protocol that to allow for the conclusion to be there was not enough data, there's data missing, or the data is not reliable, or the data is not disaggregated at so that it was difficult to conclude anything. But maybe within the protocols, the directions that are given, that we make that clear as well, that if the conclusion is the state needs to invest more resources into being able to get reliable data in this area, that's the conclusion, right? So give permission for that to be part of the conclusion.
Got
it. I second the motion.
Thank you, Speaker. So the motion is, actually, I think we have to restate the motion, but Senator Daughtry, before we do that, did you want to make another comment?
No, I think that's good. I think we're all getting there. I was just thinking, you know, if you're thinking of the 4 frameworks of just, you know, increased disparities, reduced, neutral, or undetermined kind of thing.
So then a motion to augment the 5 questions that were part of the proposal in the ways that we've just articulated, with some conclusionary guidance added as well. That motion was made by, I'm thinking, Senator Daughtry, and then seconded by Speaker Fecteau. Any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor with an aye, or just raise your hand. Representative Dillingham?
Yeah.
Thank you. So that's unanimous with those who are present. And Director Fox, it just begs the question, would you be able to, I'm trying to figure out now, we've made most of the decisions that we needed to make today, except for two other areas. One is to make sure that we agree to engage the parties that are being proposed. And the second is to make sure that we've got the right time frame for all of this work, including when you'd be able to give us back the questions and the framing. So let's, if we could, we'll pivot to the parties involved. I would say that based on our meeting, committee members, that the Permanent Commission and the University Main System, I think the University Main System is looking for a little bit more guidance, so I wouldn't say that they've reached that they are 100% on board. I think we need to go back to Samantha Warren and show her what have another discussion about what we're asking. I do know that for the Permanent Commission that they are on board and would provide the service to the state at no cost for the pilot. So Director Fox, is that your understanding too, that we need to take what we've concluded today, go back and talk with the representative from the humane system, and then make sure that they are in agreements with moving forward at no cost, and then make sure the committee members here know about that decision?
Yeah, it sounded to me from yesterday's meeting that they were looking for a little bit more direction, and I think Samantha wanted to go back and talk to some of her people about some of those things. So yeah, that makes sense to me. I did want to. There was I think in the proposal there was a question about whether or not the proposals, the racial impact statements would be provided to the committees when complete in a presentation format, in writing, both. So I don't know that that's critical to decide today as part of your pilot, but it was a question in there, and I just wanted to raise it in case you had overlooked it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So just to conclude, the parties, committee members will take what we've decided today. We'll get that to both the Permanent Commission and the folks at the University Humane System. Make sure that they both agree, and then we'll let you know as soon as possible by email what that agreement looks like. In terms of the racial impact statements, how it will come back to each of those legislative committees. Do you want to take that up today? It's 2:47. We probably have enough time, or we can put it to the next meeting. If I could offer a suggestion, I really think that these statements, because they're brand new to the process, should be presented to the committee, and to allow for Q&A and for any additional information the committee may want as part of a work session deliberations. I think it should be both a written report and presented in person. Any discussion, comments, thoughts about that?
I would just want to offer one thing to think about when you're making that decision, which is the time frame that we put forward was that they would receive the list of bills, or in December, and hopefully have something at the latest by the end of February. The end of February would be really outside the bounds for when committees are typically finishing up in a second session. So I think there would probably you need to be thinking about that, and also requiring committees to schedule those presentations of those statements, within that deadline. So it's not just producing the statement maybe by that date, but also the committees. That's if you are concerned about things being slowed up in the process. So obviously that's up to you to decide, but if that's something you want to keep in mind, you want to think about the dates that way, because committees are usually getting towards the end of their work or have completed their work by that time.
So thank you for that, Director Fox. I wonder if we should delay thinking about this until we know the number of bills that the review team is going to want to produce. If they say 20, then that may help inform the way that we determine this. So I will ask that we just table this until we know how many bills we're actually going to receive in this way, if you all agree. Great. So I think so again, even for the timeline, Director Fox, we need to make sure that we've got our parties in agreement to do the work. We get them the number of bills, they tell us how many they can do, and then we'd be able to put together a real good time frame that we can discuss at our next meeting. Sound good? Okay, I think that's Director Fox. I think that concludes the decisions that we needed to make today. I will ask the committee members if they have anything else to bring before us for discussion. And not hearing or seeing any. Any questions for staff that we want to put forth to our next meeting? Nope, not hearing or seeing any.
Are we meeting on November 1st? We'd only booked out for the month of October, so I just didn't know if we needed to talk about our next meeting date.
Thank you for that, Director. I would propose that we meet on November 1st so that we can.
Oh, I'm sorry, November 3rd. Forgive me,
November
November
3rd.
1st is Monday, November 3rd is Wednesday. Sorry about that.
No worries. I would ask committee members of Speaker Fecto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What will we have at our event? Like, what would be the point of conversation next week? I would just wonder if it would be worthwhile to just plan our next meeting when we have some feedback from the research array, the research groups about what their analysis is of the bills that we are sending over to them, if that would be a better time to schedule a meeting versus having a thin agenda next week and not necessarily having their feedback at that point.
It's a great point. Thank you, Speaker. Senator Daughtry and Representative Dillingham, she is no longer with us. Senator Daughtry, are you fine with following that path?
I think that makes a lot more sense. We have a lot of unknowns that we should have those in hand before we sit down next time.
So thank you for that suggestion, Speaker Fecto. It sounds to me like Director Fox will meet once we have heard back from all the interested parties.
So we should set up a meeting with them again.
Will do. Yep.
Okay.
Great. We sounds to me like we've concluded all of our business. It's 2:52, so motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Yes, thank you. It's been moved and probably seconded, and all those in favor of adjournment, we are officially adjourned. Thank you for a great meeting today. Thanks to the staff for all of the work to get us to this place. We really do appreciate it, and we'll meet again soon.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.